All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. It's a pleasure to be back on this beautiful Tuesday evening slash night. On a night when we are following events up from the game between Chelsea and Cardiff City in the quarter-finals of the EFL Cup. That game is still goalless after about 17 minutes played. So do indulge me as we do follow those events. Unfortunately, I'm having to rely on a very small screen to keep up with that game because I could not find the feed of my other feed. But it's a pleasure to be back to once again speak to you about football, about sport, and everything in that line. Yeah. We'll be discussing Bruno Fernandes in the wake of an interview that he's given, causing a bit of a stir amongst the Manchester United fan base. Whether you agree with them or disagree, that's all a matter of subjective opinion, but that is out there, that is out there. So really, we'll be looking at that, and then we will also be looking at the case for Kylian Mbappe. We'll talk about the FIFA Best 11 and Ousmane Dembele winning the FIFA Best Player Award, and that among other things. Perhaps if we forget not, Takahiro Tomiyasu will be part of our discussion because he's officially joined Ajax. That's what we'll be discussing tonight in as far as today's broadcast will be concerned. Really. So, I mean, where do we start it from? Let's start with Takahiro Tomiyasu. It's official. Takahiro Tomiyasu has officially joined Ajax. He's joined as a free agent. We know that he did leave Arsenal last summer after the two parties agreed to bring an end, to bring to a premature end on his contract. I think he still had a year left to it with an option to extend for a further year when they decided to cut ties with the player. I mean, I really feel happy for him that he's gotten a club. It's really positive because he's never been a bad player. He's always been a good player who, unfortunately for him, injuries did not do him well. Hi everyone, for those of you that are just joining us, welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is my name, and it's 20 minutes past the hour of 11 p.m. East African time. I do come to you live from Kampala, Uganda. So do me the absolute honor and favor and like the podcast while you're still here with us. Do let me know where you're joining us from down in the comment section. I'll be reading each and every single one of your comments for as long as this broadcast goes on. I see we have Dylan. Dylan says hi. Hi, Dylan. Good evening to you. Where are you joining us from? Then, okay. Yes, I was saying this about Takahiro Tomiyasu, that he's such a good player, really. When he's fully fit, he's one of the best dynamic defenders you can have. He can play for you right back, he can play left back, he can play as a center back, where he plays predominantly for the Japanese national team. But unfortunately for him, especially when you look back to last season, injuries really did him bad, and it had it was something that came at a time when he had a previous injury, so he was in and out of the team. But this time around, when he got, I think, that knee injury, he never seemed to recover from it. As soon as he looked like he was about to return, he sort of had, a setback. And eventually, Andre Bata, Mikel Arteta just decided we need to count our losses here and part ways with Takahiro Tomiyasu. They offered their best to rehabilitate him, and it just did not happen for him. And it's really unfortunate and very painful for a player to go through that. I do not think that there is a single player out there who wishes to bring their career to a premature end through injury. And And I'm not saying that's what Tomiyasu is going to do, but every time a team parts ways with a player due to injury, then they are staring down that barrel of possible early retirement, due to injuries. We all know what happened to Jack Wilshere. When he was at Arsenal, he was forced. He eventually left the club due to uh, due to injuries. Like literally, he ran out of contract. Club could not renew his contract because they just decided to part ways with him since he was never fit, like he was never available to play. Vicky says hello, hola Vicky. Where are you joining us from on this beautiful oh Jesus Christ, Cardiff City? I've just missed a golden opportunity to score and take the lead against Chelsea. I mean, I don't know what they're thinking. You're not going to get that many chances in a game like this against Chelsea. You're not going to get that many chances, so you ought to buy the few chances that you could get. They had gotten the better of Joshua Achepong to Sin Aderabiu there in defense, but that attempt was blazed wide of the mark. So in that sort of spirit. So yeah, I'm following the updates of the game right here on my secondary device. Anyways, so I mean, congratulations to him, Takahiro Tomiyasu. Ajax did put out the tweet today saying, "Welcome to Ajax, Takahiro Tomiyasu." Remember, he had joined Arsenal from Bologna. I think that was prior to the start of the 2021-2022 Premier League season. So in that very season, he went on to be quite the revelation of a player. He played really, really good. Eventually, he could make only 65 appearances in which he scored 2 goals for the Arsenal, having joined from Bologna. I mean, it's really hard to judge his Arsenal career, especially in the last 2 years of it, because eventually he spends with Arsenal. I think the 2021-2022 season, 2022-2023 season, those were his 2 good seasons. Then the subsequent season, 2023-2024, that's when he started, getting those recurring injuries. And then he played, I think, a couple of games at the start of the 2024-2025 season, and he went out through injury. I remember him being summoned, I think, for international duty, and while there, he returned with an injury, and life was never the same for him, eventually. So they lost him to injury, and even when his contract had been renewed, the club decided it's time to cut our losses and move on, and so they mutually agreed to terminate his contract and move on. And he was replaced by Christian Mosquera, who, as misfortune would have it, is equally currently out through injury, having suffered that ankle injury that will see him out of action for the next 6 to 8 weeks, ever since suffering the injury. So really, it's very, very unfortunate when it comes to players and injuries. That's all I can say about that. Then, speaking of injuries, Arsenal's Ben White is set to spend a month on the sidelines through injury. He suffered that hamstring injury, and reports do suggest that he will be out for at least a month following that injury he suffered in Arsenal's 2-1 victory against Wolverhampton Wanderers. Very horrible performance. So he's expected to return possibly in mid-January. That means that Arsenal are left with 1 right back, and that's Julian Timber. And yet he's a player that we've been saying he's played so many games or too many minutes and needs a rest. Looks like it may not come early that he gets to catch his breath, because, I mean, they play Everton over the weekend, and midweek they will have a game against Crystal Palace. That's a difficult game. And after that, they will have a game against Brighton. And then after that, it will be Aston Villa. It will be a midweek game. And then going into the weekend, it will be Bournemouth. So action is going to come thick and fast, and they just do not have the options. Maybe they can hope that Gabriel Magalhaes can return, because if he returns, maybe I don't know if you can play Hinkapi alongside Gabriel Magalhaes and push Saliba to right back to give Timber a bit of a rotation, or you'd play there Christian Nogard. I mean, if push comes to shove, they will have to find the solutions within, or perhaps even play their Declan Rice. Not the desired solution, but if push comes to shove, like I said. So Ben White is expected to be out for a period of a month. Okay, so that's at that. Then quickly, also speaking of injuries, Jamal Musiala has returned to training with Bayern Munich for the first time since breaking his ankle during the FIFA Club World Cup when he had a clash with Gianluigi Donnarumma when PSG were beating up against Bayern Munich in that competition that was played over there in the United States of America during the course of the summer. So he's finally returned to training. Jamal Musiala is one of the best young players there is in European football. Now, unfortunately for him, last season and going through the summer, because in the summer, while he represented Bayern Munich, he had just come out of, another injury, and then he suffered another one. So he needs he's one of the best talents that there is in terms of youngsters. I remember watching him on a few occasions, of course, particularly in the UEFA Champions League, and he's so good. He's so good, and by the way, he's a very consistent player. He's a very, very consistent player. He's in the same bracket with the likes of Michael Olise, with the likes of Desile Doe. I don't know if you would put Bradley Bacola in that sort of bracket. The Cole Palmers, very young and yet very talented. Those kinds of players, really, Jamal Musiala. And I mean, it's really good to see the kind of talent that he is to be back on the grass. I hope he gets to play a lot of football without injury, because in his absence, Leonard Carl had taken that role, and it will be very hard. It won't come easy to dethrone Leonard Carl, because Leonard Carl equally is quite the revelation, or has been quite the revelation for this Bayern Munich side, in as far as youngsters go. Okay. Then still on injuries, I mean, there's too much injury news making the rounds. Pep Guardiola did confirm that Jeremy Doku is out again. He said Jeremy Doku will be out again. I do not know when he will return. Maybe I think New Year, Sunderland, maybe, to be sure. That was Pep Guardiola speaking ahead of their game against Brentford tomorrow in the quarterfinals of the EFL Cup. Remember, tomorrow, Manchester City take on Brentford in the other quarterfinal of the EFL Cup. That game will come at 10:30 p.m. East African time. Then the other game will be between Newcastle at home against Fulham. That game will come at 11:15 p.m. That's when it will kick off for the third quarterfinal of the EFL Cup. Then the fourth quarterfinal is the one that will be played next week, again between Arsenal and Crystal Palace. We're going to discuss Arsenal in a bit because they too have news of their own. So that's the update on that regard. Then okay, let's move on to Kylian Mbappe. Kylian Mbappe has won his case against PSG. Now he took PSG to court seeking, I think, compensation, or seeking that PSG pay him, his deserved wages and bonuses, and he's won that case, that lawsuit against PSG, with the judge ruling in Mbappe's favor, and as a result, the court of Paris have sided with the footballer and ordered PSG to pay him around 61 million euros, according to RMC reports. So, I mean, that's another huge win for Kylian Mbappe off the pitch. So let's wait and see how things will be for for Kylian Mbappe. But yeah, that's huge news. Speaking of huge news, still on the night, Ousmane Dembele has won the FIFA Best Award of the year 2025. He gets to complete the double. Remember, he won the Ballon d'Or and now he's won the FIFA Best Player. Now, during the same time, they've also revealed their FIFA Best Pro 11, which I totally do not agree with. And I'll tell you why I do not agree with it. In goal, they have Gianluigi Donnarumma. I have no problem with that. They have Nuno Mendes at left back. They have Achraf Hakimi at right back. I agree with those. They have William Pacho and Virgil van Dijk. Now, okay, Virgil van Dijk, it's okay. William Pacho, PSG have 3 of the back 4. That's okay. They all deserve to be there. It's particularly in midfield where I have issues. One, they have Vitinha in this team. No doubt, had a very good season. I agree, he deserves to be in this team. They have Pedri. Now, whereas he wouldn't be my first pick in this team, because I would actually put Joao Neves ahead of Pedri in as far as last season was concerned, but I do understand Pedri was equally very good. So, in a way, based on their judgment, he does deserve to be here. And if they had chosen Joao Neves, I do not think, again, many of us would disagree. But the 2 players I want to disagree on are Jude Bellingham and Cole Palmer being in this team. Tell me why they are in this team. Somebody tell me, because I don't get it. Why are they in the best 11? Now, I can name a handful of players who played better football than Jude Bellingham last season. Joao Neves is one of those. Declan Rice had a better season, in my opinion, than Jude Bellingham. Now, both players didn't win anything in terms of accolades, but I would say he had a better season. Moises Caicedo had a brilliant season with Chelsea. Let's not forget, they won the UEFA Conference League and won the FIFA Club World Cup. Now, players like Michael Olise at Bayern Munich had a better season than Cole Palmer, in my opinion. Players like Desiree Doué, I think he scored a brace in the finals of the UEFA Champions League, had a better season than Cole Palmer, and yet we have Cole Palmer in this team. Players like Mohamed Salah had a better season than Jude Bellingham and Cole Palmer combined, and yet Mo Salah is not in this team. Because it's a 4-4-2 kind of team. Ahead of them is Ousmane Dembele and Lamine Yamal. Now, again, how do you assemble this team and you do not have Rafinha in this team? And then you have Cole Palmer and you have Jude Bellingham. Explain it to me. People who assembled this team. In my opinion, I would actually, I'd have a single pivot in Vitinha. I'd accommodate Rafinha. I'd accommodate Mo Salah. I'd accommodate Desiree Doué. So what that would imply is that, and this is not about team balance. It's not about midfield balance or something or anything. It's about picking the best players. So I'll play Vitinha in the pivot. I'll play Salah to the right. I'll play Rafinha to the left. I'll play Desiree Doué as my number 10, and then, as the number 8 kind of role, and then Lamine Yamal, Ousmane Dembele. But, Cole Palmer and Jude Bellingham out of the team. That for me is out of the team. Pedri, I agree him being here, but in my view, I would choose otherwise, because I thought Rafinha, he was the best player in La Liga last season. He was the best player. And he was competing for the Ballon d'Or. He was in the top 5, even though I did not agree that he'd be in 5th place, because you had Ousmane Dembele, Lamine Yamal, Vitinha, Mo Salah, and and you know, Rafinha, in that front, you know. So those were the first five players. Tell me why those two of those players are not here. I mean, it is what it is. Awards are a scam. Sometimes, at least that's how they come off as such. So, I mean, I could think of a long list of players that had a better season than Jude Bellingham and Cole Palmer combined, really, in my opinion. So I do not agree with them being part of this FIFA Pro kind of, 11 in as far as tonight is concerned. Meanwhile, the game between Chelsea and Cardiff City is still goalless. I have no doubt Chelsea will eventually find the breakthrough. I have no doubt about that, but it's not yet happened. When you look at Chelsea's starting 11, it's a pretty strong team, one you would expect to be featuring for Chelsea at this kind of stage of the competition. Philippe Jorgensen in goal, Benoit Badiashile alongside Tosin Aderabio, Joshua Achepong at right back with Jorel Hato at left back, Moises Caicedo alongside Andre Santos, Facundo Benanote in the number 10 role, with Tariq George and Jamie Gittens on the respective wings, and then Makui are there. They have a very strong bench in Robert Sanchez, Robert Chaloba, Enzo Fernandez, Wesley Fofana, Alejandro Garnacho, Malo Gusto, Richie James, Joao Pedro, and Pedro Neto. We know that they have a big game coming for them over the weekend in as far as the Premier League is concerned. So, I mean, if you cannot rest players, if you cannot rotate your team at this stage, if you cannot rotate players in the EFL Cup, then I do not know when you will rotate players. So it's a good opportunity for them. Of course, over the weekend, like I said, they have a big game. They will come in the early kickoff against Newcastle away to St. James's Park, a place where they lost last season by 2-0 because they finished that game down to 10 men with Nicholas Jackson, who is out on loan at Bayern Munich, getting a red card for an elbow, I think, on one of those Newcastle players. Speaking of Nicholas Jackson, I think one of the Bayern Munich directors was being asked whether they will sign Nicholas Jackson permanently, and he said they're not just yet there yet. Bayern Munich director Ebal on Nicholas and Jackson's future said signing him on permanent or not, there is no tendency yet. So they're not yet sold. He's done okay, but they're not yet sold. Meanwhile, Brandon Rodgers, former Celtic, Leicester City, and Swansea Liverpool manager Brendan Rodgers has put pen to paper on a 2.5-year contract as the new Al Qadashi manager in the Saudi Pro League. So the agreement has been sealed. So that is happening. So yeah, that's what's up. Then of course our players are going away for AFCON. Ruben Amorim was speaking about that, and he said they will have to find solutions within their own team to when Amadou Diallo and Brian Mbeumo go off for the AFCON. He said when asked about if Manchester United need to overhaul their defense, he said, no, I think we have talent in the back. We just need to do better as a team defending. Yeah, for me, part of fixing that defense begins with fixing that midfield. Then speaking about Ahmad and Mbeumo, he said Ahmad and Mbeumo will go to AFCON. Now we will try to find a solution with the players that we have. We are ready to cope. We will try to find a way to score the goals in a different way. That was the Manchester United manager Ruben Amorim speaking in the aftermath of their 4-all draw against FC Bournemouth last night. Now, speaking of Manchester United, or continuing with Manchester United, Bruno Fernandes has spoken to the media about what happened in the summer. We know that Al Hilal were after him they wanted him. They were willing to pay £100 million to Manchester United. And I remember making the case that if I'm Manchester United, I would take the £100 million. That I did not think there was going to come a time, because Al Hilal wanted to sign him to help them with their exploits in the FIFA Club World Cup. I did not think that there was going to come a time when Manchester United can command that kind of fee, because they stood to make a profit on a player that is already 30. And not just any small profit, but a huge profit on their captain. On the other side, Al Hilal were offering huge sums of money. Now, I know he's the highest paid player at Manchester United, I think earning about 350 grand a week, but those guys were offering what, 650, possibly £1 million pounds a week? It was huge sums of money. So, anyways, he was speaking about that deal, Bruno, on the Al Hilal deal that collapsed this summer. He said, I'm very well paid, but obviously, he said, I'm very well paid, but obviously the difference is huge. That was never what guided me, he told Canal 11. I could have left trying to focus. Sorry, he said, I could have left trying to force the club, but I never felt in a position to do so. Sorry, to do that. I felt empathy and affection. And then he goes on to say, if one day I hope to play in Saudi Arabia, I will play in Saudi Arabia. My lifestyle will change. My children's lives will be sunny. After 6 years in Manchester with cold and rain, I will be playing in a growing league with recognized players. That's Bruno Fernandes speaking to Canal 11. Then he goes on to add, still in that conversation, he said, Manchester United wanted me to leave last summer. I have that in my head. Now, those are the key words that sort of have caused a stir in the Manchester United fan base, or caused debate. He says, and I repeat, Manchester United wanted me to leave last summer. I have that in my head. I told the directors this, but I think they didn't have the courage to make that decision. I decided to stay also because of family reasons, but because I genuinely like the club. The conversation with the manager also made me stay. But from the club side, I felt a bit like, if you leave, it's not so bad for us. It hurts me a lot. More than hurting, it makes me sad because I'm a player they have nothing to criticize about. I'm always available. I always play good or bad. I give my all. Then you see things around you, players who do not value the club as much as, who do not value the club as much and do not defend the club as much, but that makes you sad. Now, one, I do not know what prompted Bruno Fernandes to speak about this or to make these revelations. I mean, it is his truth. He gets to choose when to put it out and all. Now, and this has nothing to do with where Manchester United are this season or the result from Monday, but I think on the player's part, I think he must have felt a sense of betrayal. You know how people want you to leave without telling you that you should leave? That's what he says he felt. He did not want to leave because he loves the club at heart, but also he had had a conversation with his manager, which strengthened his conviction to stay at the club. Hi, Daniel Tuton. Good evening. How are you doing? I'm all right on this side. I hope you're well as well. So now, some Manchester United fans are saying, if they never told you explicitly that they wanted you to go, and it's just a feeling that you have, couldn't you be wrong about that impression? Because, I mean, in the manner in which they may have handled it, it could have been subjective by its own nature. But then you drew to your own conclusions to say that they wanted you out without them explicitly telling you. Because he says, I told the directors this, but I think they didn't have the courage to make that decision. He says, Man United wanted me to leave last summer. I have that in my head. So I don't know maybe when he has the conversation with the directors, they possibly, I'm just thinking here. Meanwhile, that game between Chelsea and Cardiff City has gone into halftime and it's still goalless. Maybe they had a conversation and it went. I'm trying to imagine or make impressions here how it could have gone. That look, it's good money they are offering, but what do you want to do? Do you want to leave? And then possibly he says no. And then you see, when you're communicating with people, sometimes it's less about what they say and more about what they do or their expression. So that's why, like I said, I'm trying to imagine this conversation going down, because he says they wanted him to leave. They just did not have the courage to make the decision. So in other words, they never sat down to make the decision to say, let's sell Bruno Fernandes. But in his interactions with them, he felt like they were saying to him, it's not so bad if you are to leave. If you leave, it's not so bad. In other words, they looked at the money and they're like, yeah, the money is good. And it's not personal, by the way, it's business. And from a captain's perspective and a player who thinks he's being loyal to the club, I understand the feeling of betrayal. But forget not, at the end of the day, Manchester United is a business. And the business doesn't catch feelings. People do. Because today it's just Sir Jim Ratcliffe making the decisions. Tomorrow it could be somebody else. Today it could be Omar Barida, a CEO. Tomorrow it could be Jason Wilcox as a sporting director. It could be anybody among the top brass making that decision, making that call. You may not agree with it. You may not accept it at heart, but it is what it is. At the end of the day, it's a business decision. Whether you think it's right, whether you think it's wrong, and whether you're proven right that it was the wrong decision, at the end of the day, it's not personal for them, as it would be personal for a fan or personal for a player. For them, it's business, you know? So, like I said, I do not know what's prompted Bruno Fernandes to speak about this in that manner at this time. I have a feeling it will be the kind of conversation maybe you have in the summer. I have a feeling that it's the kind of conversation you have at the end of the season or even after you've left the club, you know. But he's decided to have it. But like I said, it is his truth. He gets to choose when to speak it. It's his story to tell. And maybe he needed to get that off his chest. How much United fans receive it and dissect it is all up to them. But I've seen a few divided opinions on this one, you know. So, but it is what it is. We will leave the conversation about Manchester United at that, and Bruno Fernandes. Meanwhile, it is being reported that Arsenal players held a team meeting in the immediate aftermath of their 2-1 victory against Wolves over the weekend. We know one thing for sure is that the performance was far from even being average. It was a poor performance. And you could see the players in their body language. They were disappointed with themselves. The Declan Rice gave them a bit of a dressing down as they celebrated that goal that won them the game, you know. I think more than anybody else, those players knew that they had not given their best on the day. And this is according to the Telegraph, who said that Arsenal players held an immediate dressing room meeting after the Wolves game to review their performance. The squad openly admitted the display was below their standards and not good enough. There was a clear understanding that it is too early in the season for complacency, with players taking responsibility and showing intent to correct issues quickly. Because let's be honest, it may not have had all the best players Arsenal have, but that team that started the game was better than the team that started against Club Rouge that won by 3 goals to nil earlier on in the week in the UEFA Champions League. So they come against Wolverhampton Wanderers, the worst team in the Premier League, who have only 2 draws, who had only 2 draws in 15 games, this being their 16th game. Regardless of what strategy they deployed, there's no justification that is sufficient for us to give for Arsenal's poor performance. Because if Arsenal had had a good performance and were struggling to still find the breakthrough, it will be a whole different story. Perhaps the discussion will be different. Now, I understand that small teams get hyped up for these big games. And like I've said before, or made the argument before, teams set up differently, largely conservatively, when they come up against Arsenal this season. Even Manchester City did that. So it means that they respect Arsenal as a formidable opponent, as a formidable team that they know is capable of obliterating them, that is capable of humiliating an opponent if you leave yourself exposed or if you try to play expansive, fancy football. They know that. But so even with the low blocks, the overly being defensive and everything in that line, even with all that, you would still fancy that Arsenal could have done much, much better, 4 times better than they did in that particular game. Possibly 10 times even better, Like I said, for me, besides Leandro Trossard, Bukayo Saka, and it's, a maybe by his own standards. And who else? There's another player. All the other players, I did not think they did enough. And maybe Miles Lewis Kelly. They just did not do enough. So, like I said, in our different broadcasts, Mikel Arteta was very, very angry with this team, how they played, how they went about the game. I think they did not follow all the instructions. They did not follow the culture of the team in how they defended, particularly that moment before they concede. I mean, for a moment, Wolverhampton Wanderers had more than 70% of the ball possession leading up to that goal. And I remember saying it, you can't manage a game in your own half. You're going to concede a goal, and eventually they conceded. So it was that bad. Now, when the manager is that angry at his team for the poor performance and the team themselves reflect on their own performance and acknowledge that it was below par, then that's a good sign. It's happened to Arsenal before. And I think that was around the 1998 season. Now, of course, my football knowledge at the time and even access to the information wasn't as good as it is today. But even that time, I think they had lost to Blackburn by 3 goals to nil. They admitted to themselves that they had not performed, on the day. And following that team talk and admissions, they went on to win a cup double. They won the Premier League title and I think the FA Cup. Now, I'm not saying Arsenal, that team talk is going to culminate in them, winning the EFL Cup and the league, or the league and the FA Cup, or the league and the Champions League. No. But it's a very, very good thing to know when you've not been good enough. Oftentimes, we find it hard to acknowledge that we've not lived to the expectations. And in this particular case, I'm pleased that those are players. Declan Rice gave them a dressing down, And again, because he offered that leadership on the pitch, because you could see him as he walked off at the final whistle when he goes past Gabriel Magalhaes, as he tried to cheer him a little bit up for the win. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, like I said, the positive for the Arsenal was that they still managed to get away with all the 3 points. Otherwise, all the other and things were negative, including Ben White's injury. So the likes of Gabriel Magalhaes, Christian Mosquera, Kai Havertz were on the sidelines watching this game. They were not entertained, but they were happy that somehow the team got the 3 points and that they can take lessons off of that and learn from it. Now, the other part of the argument is that they had played too much football up until that point. That's also true, but it's no excuse given the size of squad they have. Of course, we will make the argument that injuries have not helped that cause. But like I said, given the quality they had in that squad and on that bench, they ought to have done really, really better, you know. Following Declan Rice's, leadership and performances, these conversations of, Declan Rice should be captain, Gabriel Magalhaes should be his vice. I've seen, suggestions Bukayo Saka shouldn't be vice captain, Martin Odegaard shouldn't be captain, and Declan Rice and Magalhaes should be, and all those things. They're not bad discussions. They're not bad suggestions. But when you're a manager, you're trying to maintain the cohesion of the team. You have a captain who other players believe in, not because he's the most vocal, but he's equally vocal, but because of how he guides and leads other players on and off of the pitch. On the pitch, he's more about doing, leading by example, trying to dictate the tempo of the game and things like that. Same for Bukayo Saka. He's not that talkative guy in terms of being commanding. But for me, the thing I want to nullify in this whole argument is that for you to be a leader, you must be the one wearing the armband. No. Some of the most successful managers have disqualified that argument. I'll make reference to Jose Mourinho. You wearing that armband does not necessarily mean you're the most reliable leader in that dressing room. I'll give you an example. When Granit Xhaka was stripped of the Arsenal captaincy during the Unai Emery era, fast forward, he still spoke and players listened because they believed in him. They believed he had the leadership qualities. So when Declan Rice speaks, he does not need that armband to speak. They will listen. Because he has the instinctive leadership qualities in him. When Gabriel Magalhaes speaks, they listen, and he's not the lead captain. When the captain speaks, Martin Odegaard, they do listen. When Bukayo Saka speaks, they will listen. And I'd want to believe that when Christian Odegaard stands up to say a word or two, they will listen because of his seniority in terms of age and having been a captain at Brentford, So, for me, the idea that certain media outlets or sections of fans are trying to paint that, how about when you wake up and you have 3 players in the mold of Declan Rice in the same team? Are you going to give all 3 the armband? No, at the end of the day, it's one player that is going to wear that armband. It's going to be one player. So, for me, leadership on the pitch is less about who is wearing the armband. It's more about who thinks has something to say to the team. How many times did we see Gabriel Jesus give team talks? How many times did we see Alexander Zinchenko give team talks? Not because they were the captains, no. But they do have the leadership experience. Zinchenko has won the armband, I think, for Ukraine before, having been part of a team that won Premier League titles at Manchester City. They knew what it takes to win. So when they have something to say, those players listen. Present day, Zinchenko is out on loan to Nottingham Forest. But when Gabriel Jesus stands to speak, those players will listen because look around that dressing room. Not many players have a Champions League medal besides Gabriel Jesus, you know? So for me, leadership is about that. It's like saying, actually, let me give you this other example. Have you not seen Mikel Arteta is the manager of that team? He is the leader of that team. How many times have you seen players being brought on as substitutes, receive instructions from Gabriel Hens, receive instructions from Albert Stevenberg, receive a talk from Nicolas Jova? Every time Arsenal gets a set piece, Nicolas Jova stands up to give guidance to that team. Not because he's the head coach, not because he's the manager. No. But those players know in that moment he has something to contribute to the conversation. You know, when those players are listening to Gabriel Hens, they're not shrugging him down to say, you're not the manager. We'll only listen to Mikel Arteta. No. That is leadership. You know, that's leadership. Take an example. In a family setting, we all know that largely a father is the head of the home. But are you saying that your 20-year-old, brother, sister, when they stand up to speak, siblings do not listen? Is that what you're saying? So even in a team sport, you have that. These players have different characters. You remember when we were speaking about Gabriel Magalhaes' absence through injury, and I told you when we were discussing what that team was going to miss in Gabriel Magalhaes, I did say, in terms as defenders overall, there is not much they're going to miss in terms of quality. But the thing about Gabriel Magalhaes is he comes with leadership. He guides that backline. And when they go forward for set pieces, he is their biggest threat in set piece plays, So they were going to miss those two qualities. And whereas all these other players are good at defending, they do not have those leadership instinctive qualities, and they do not offer the same amount of threat when they go for set pieces, So really, keep that in mind. Meanwhile, Chelsea, at the resumption of the second half, have made some changes, introducing Joao Pedro and Alejandro Garnacho in the team to try and improve on their attacking prowesses in that game. But it's still goalless, So, guys, for me, the conversation of who should be Arsenal captain and everything in that regard, I do not want to dismiss the argument that that Declan Rice is worthy of being a captain, that he has the captaincy qualities. But let's not reduce leadership to who wears that armband, because then we will lose the debate. Now, let's also use maybe one last example. We know that teams suffer injuries, bad as they are. Just imagine you have Declan Rice is your captain, and then he suffers an injury for 2-3 months. Same happens for your would-be vice in Gabriel Magalhaes. Are you saying the team will be losing games because they lack that leadership on the pitch? Are you saying other voices in that dressing room shouldn't step up to speak? Because that's what it is all about. So what do you do with that then on the pitch? The things you want them to do while wearing the armband, I believe they still can do even without wearing that armband. Declan Rice is still vocal. He speaks down to he speaks to his captain. You know, when Gabriel Magalhaes is on that pitch, he does not need to be wearing the armband to command his backline. No, it's about galvanizing your fellow teammates. You know, and I think it does that. Papyrus, hi Papyrus, good to have you back. I will watch you. I will watch as you bleed. For I warned you and warned you. You do not heed. It's your fault and has to why did what I did. It was all you as sharks. Okay, I did not get that a comment really properly, but it is what it is. So, guys, allow me wrap the conversation here tonight. We've gone through it all. We've discussed Kylian Mbappe's case that is won against PSG. We've looked at Bruno Fernandes' comments. We've looked at Arsenal's post Wolves game team meeting. We've looked at some of the injuries to Jeremy Doku, Ben White. We've looked at all that. We've discussed Manchester United stars that are going to be off for the AFCON, which does get underway in a couple of days. Tomorrow, Uganda Cranes have a friendly game against Gabon. The tournament officially kicks off on Sunday. That's for AFCON. So we'll be looking at it, and more as of when it does start and as it grows closer. Then also, what else? Yeah, I think we've gone through it all. So allow me wish you a blessed night, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye for now.